God, you even smell like motor oil and cheap laundry soap." She said it like a verdict, like it settled something permanent about him right there in front of everyone. Ryan Caldwell didn't move. He stood in the doorway of the 35th floor boardroom, grease-stained uniform, broad shoulders, one hand wrapped around the old wrench his grandfather had pressed into his palm the morning before he passed. The kind of wrench that has a story in every scratch. 20 executives stared at him, the way people stare at something that has wandered in from the wrong part of the building. The engine on the conference table was sparking. Detroit, November. The kind of cold that gets into your knuckles and doesn't let go until April. Nexus Autotech occupied the top floors of a glass tower overlooking the river. 35 stories of clean lines and expensive furniture. People who had gone to the right schools, worn the right shoes their entire lives. The lobby smelled like fresh lilies and new carpet. The maintenance closet where Ryan kept his tools smelled like WD-40 and yesterday's coffee. Serafina Voss was 38 years old, CEO, the kind of woman who made a room rearrange itself around her without trying. Blonde hair pulled back so severely it looked like a decision. Heels that struck the marble floor like a gavel. She had built Nexus from a struggling startup into a $400 million company on sheer will and cold intelligence. She did not have patience for the man who unclogged the third-floor sink. A $150 million contract with a European transport consortium was unraveling by the hour. A flaw in the flagship autonomous engine. The engineers had named it harmonic disruption. 6 weeks. 3 teams from 3 of the country's most prestigious universities. Nothing. The engine sat on the boardroom table like a slow accusation. Sparking, smoking, deeply and stubbornly broken. And now Serafina was pointing at it, pointing at Ryan. "Here's the deal." Her voice carried the particular chill of someone who had never once been told no. "Fix this engine, the one 3 elite teams couldn't touch, and I'll marry you right here in this boardroom." A pause. "Fail, and I'll make sure security walks you out of Detroit for good." She snapped her fingers an inch from his face. The room went completely silent. Ryan's mind went somewhere else for just a moment. Home. Liam, 7 years old, waiting at the kitchen table right now with a cold lunchbox and a crayon drawing he'd made at school. A picture of a man with a wrench. Careful, proud words printed in the corner. "My dad fixes things." That same afternoon, Liam had come home with a torn shirt. A boy in 2nd grade had told him his father was just a mechanic. Ryan's grip tightened on the wrench handle. 3 years he'd been doing this alone. 3 years since the accident that took his wife on an ordinary Tuesday in March, when the roads were still icy and the world didn't pause for a single second. 3 years of packing school lunches, singing off-key lullabies, telling his son every single night, "Kindness always comes back around, buddy. You just have to keep giving it." He had helped everyone in that building, quietly, without being asked. He'd fixed cars in the parking garage at night for people who couldn't afford the shop. Never sent a bill. Never asked for so much as a thank you. Not one person in that boardroom knew. But here was the thing Serafina Voss didn't know. Ryan had already solved it. 2 weeks earlier. A detailed internal report. 7 handwritten pages. Transferred to the company system. The exact cause of the harmonic failure. A fix that would cost less than $40. Serafina had replied in under 20 minutes. 1 line. "Not your job. Stay in your lane." The report was deleted from the system before the end of the business day. Ryan looked at the engine now. He could hear it the way you hear a piece of music you already know by heart. That small, off-rhythm knock buried deep in the roar. Quiet as a secret being kept from everyone but him. He looked at Serafina. Then he took 1 step forward into the room. He said quietly, "All right." What unfolded over the next 90 minutes would change every single person in that building, including the woman who laughed at him. Stay with us. Because what Ryan was carrying in that worn notebook in his back pocket was about to silence a room full of the most credentialed people in Detroit. To understand what Ryan Caldwell was doing in that boardroom, You have to go back 6 weeks. Not farther than that. Just 6 weeks. The NX7 autonomous drive core was Nexus Autotech's entire future. Sleek, powerful, catastrophically flawed. Past a certain threshold of sustained operation, something inside it shuddered and destabilized. A deep, rhythmic disruption that the engineers called harmonic failure. Careful, distancing language from people who understood the terminology but couldn't locate the source. 3 elite teams had tried. Whiteboards full of equations, conference rooms full of expensive sandwiches, and frustrated silence. 6 weeks, nothing. And every night. Long after those teams packed their laptops and went back to their downtown apartments, Ryan Caldwell mopped the floors of those same empty rooms, stepping carefully around the uncapped markers and the coffee cups left for someone else to deal with. He was not supposed to touch the engine. He touched it anyway. Not from arrogance, from something much simpler. His grandfather, Harlan Caldwell, had run a one-man garage in Flint for 32 years. A space heater in the corner, oil rags stacked in a margarine tub, the particular warm smell of a place where real work got done. Harlan had one saying he came back to over and over, the way a preacher comes back to a text. Engines don't care about your degree, son. They just need somebody patient enough to listen. People are the same way. Ryan had carried that like a compass needle his whole adult life, every night for 6 weeks. He pressed his palm flat against the NX7's casing and listened. He kept notes in a small spiral notebook, the drugstore kind, the same sort his mother used for grocery lists. In the unhurried, careful handwriting of someone who has learned that precision matters more than speed. He found the answer on a Wednesday evening, alone in the room, nothing but a work lamp and his own attention. The flaw was in a crankshaft component manufactured in Munich, machined to metric specifications. While the AI control system had been calibrated using American standard measurements, the gap between those two systems was less than the width of a human hair. But at the tolerances this engine operated under, that small mismatch compounded with every rotation, until exactly 14 minutes and 37 seconds of sustained operation. The whole system shuddered, like something trying to pull itself apart at the seams. 2 worlds that had never been properly introduced, talking past each other. The fix was a custom harmonic dampener, off-the-shelf components. The entire repair would cost less than $40. 2 careful hours. He typed it up. 7 pages. Submitted it through the internal reporting system with a subject line that read simply, Possible Solution. NX7 Harmonic Disruption. Serafina's reply arrived in under 20 minutes. 1 line. Not your job. Stay in your lane. The report was gone from the system by end of day. Ryan stood in the maintenance closet, phone in hand, screen going dark. He thought about Liam, about the drawing on the refrigerator door, a crayon wrench, a crayon man, block letters that said, "My dad fixes things." He thought about Harlan's hands, which were never quite clean, even on Sundays. He put his phone in his pocket and went back to mopping the floors. That is exactly the kind of man Ryan Caldwell was. Now, here's the thing about quiet, persistent kindness. It moves through a building the way water moves through old wood, slow, invisible, until one day you realize the whole structure has changed and nobody can say exactly when. In the months he'd worked at Nexus, Ryan had helped more than 30 employees with their vehicles. Parking garages at night, Saturday mornings, cold January lunch breaks. He never announced it, never sent an invoice. When people tried to pay him, he always said the same thing. Don't worry about it, just something my grandfather taught me. Help when you're able. No need to make a thing of it. He'd fixed a brake line for a woman named Carol from accounting, who'd been crying in the parking structure one morning because she couldn't afford the repair shop and her kids needed school supplies. He'd replaced a water pump for a young engineer named Marcus, who'd just transferred from Atlanta and didn't know a soul in Detroit yet. He'd quietly patched a slow tire for Serafina's personal assistant, twice, without saying a word to anyone. None of them had mentioned any of it to Serafina. Why would they? It was simply kindness. The ordinary, unremarkable kind that doesn't come with a press release. Down on the building's first floor, in the Nexus Company daycare, an 8-year-old girl named Alara Voss sat alone in a small plastic chair, a brown teddy bear with one loose button eye pressed to her chest. She'd been waiting for her mother since 5 o'clock. It was nearly 7 now. The caregiver had put on a movie for the other children still there. Alara wasn't watching. She was just sitting quietly, the way children sit when they've learned. A little too early. That waiting is simply what you do. Nobody on the 35th floor knew she was down there. And then the maintenance man raised his hand in front of 200 people. "I think I know how to fix it," Ryan said. The room erupted in laughter, not the polite kind, the sharp, dismissive kind with edges on it. But in the back row, 3 people who recognized Ryan from the parking garage exchanged a quiet, private look. Carol from accounting, Marcus from engineering, a young woman named Priya, whose brake line Ryan had fixed without a word on a frozen February morning. They didn't laugh. Something would go wrong that no credential, no title, and no authority in that building could fix. Keep watching, because what happens next will remind you that the things that truly matter are almost never the things that look impressive from the outside. Serafina let the laughter go on just a moment longer than necessary. That was intentional. It always was with her. The pause that told a room where the power sat. Then she tilted her head. Regarding Ryan the way you regard something mildly interesting you've discovered at the bottom of a junk drawer. Fine. The laughter stopped as if someone had turned a dial. Her voice had gone smooth and cold again. The particular chill of a woman who had been told yes so reliably that no felt like a foreign language. 90 minutes. Every employee in this building watches it live, and our investors in Munich are already on the feed. She let that settle. Succeed, and you're head of engineering, effective immediately. A pause. Fail, and I mean so much as a single bolt out of place, and you will never work in the American auto industry again. Every contact I have, every door I can close, I will close. She smiled, very slightly. Are we clear? Ryan nodded once, small, steady, not from fear, from something much more settled than fear. A woman crossed the room toward him from the far side, 62 years old, silver hair, reading glasses on a beaded chain, the kind you find on the spinner rack at the drugstore, right next to the birthday cards with the envelopes already stuck together. She walked with the unhurried authority of someone who has nothing left to prove to a single person in that room. Dr. Amelia Voss, Serafina's mother. A former lead engineer at Tesla, 4 patents, a reputation the industry still discussed in hushed, respectful tones. She had flown in from Tucson 2 days earlier. She had reviewed every simulation, every equation, every whiteboard in every conference room. Then she had gone very quiet, the way she always did when she'd gotten somewhere that other people hadn't reached yet. She stopped beside Ryan, spoke low enough that only he could hear. "Show them," she said simply. "That real talent doesn't need a certificate to prove itself." Ryan looked at her for a moment. Something in his face eased. Not relaxed exactly, but settled. The way a person looks when someone they didn't expect finally sees them clearly. He turned to the engine. He placed his palm flat on the casing, closed his eyes. The room hummed with the restless, skeptical energy of 200 people waiting for a man to fail at something publicly. 7 seconds. 8. 9. Someone near the back whispered something. A few people shifted. Then Ryan opened his eyes and reached into his back pocket. The drugstore notebook. 30 pages of handwritten observations, diagrams, measurements. 6 weeks of quiet, solitary work. Documented in the steady hand of someone who took precision seriously. Dr. Amelia leaned in and read 3 lines. Something moved across her face. Not surprise exactly, more like confirmation. She stepped back without a word, giving him room. "The problem," Ryan said calmly, turning to face the room, "is a conversation that was never finished." He found the specific component in under 4 minutes, held it up so the live stream cameras could see it clearly. This part was machined in Munich to metric specifications. The AI control system running this engine was calibrated in American standard measurements. The difference between those two systems, at this component, is smaller than a human hair. He set the part down carefully, but this engine runs at tolerances where that difference multiplies with every rotation. At exactly 14 minutes and 37 seconds, the mismatch reaches a threshold, and the whole system tries to correct itself all at once. The silence in the room was a different quality now, heavier, more serious. "I submitted a report about this 2 weeks ago," Ryan added. He said it without anger, just as a fact, offered plainly. From the live stream monitors, the feed showed the Munich investors leaning forward in their chairs simultaneously. Klaus Reinhardt, silver-haired and unreadable, hands folded on the table, full attention on the screen. Ryan worked the way he always worked, with the concentrated, unhurried focus of a man alone in his own garage on a slow Saturday morning. Methodical, economical, each movement certain. He installed a custom harmonic dampener he had assembled himself from components he'd sourced and paid for on his own time. The total cost of the parts was $37. 40 minutes in, sweat was running down his face. The smell of heated metal filled the boardroom. Someone had quietly opened a window. The live stream counter ticked in the corner of the wall screen. At 51 minutes, Ryan reached into his jacket pocket and took out his phone. He made a video call without breaking the rhythm of his work. Liam answered on the second ring, pajamas already on, bowl of cereal in front of him, the specific cheerful expression of a 7-year-old who has no idea his father is currently doing something that will change the rest of both their lives. "Hey, buddy." Ryan's hands kept moving, steady as ever. "I need to tell you something. I tried to do the right thing here, and for a while nobody listened, but I kept going anyway. You know why?" Liam thought about it seriously. Spoon suspended. "Because that's what we do?" Ryan smiled. "The real kind, that starts at the eyes." "That's exactly right. I'll be home tonight. Save me some cereal." "It'll be soggy," Liam warned. "That's okay. I like it soggy." He ended the call, put the phone away, kept working. In the back of the room, Carol from accounting pressed her hand over her mouth. At the 84th minute, Ryan set down his wrench, straightened up, looked at the engine. "Start it," he said, to no one in particular, quietly. The way you say a thing when you already know the answer. The lead engineer hesitated, then reached for the ignition panel. The engine turned over, caught, and ran. Smooth, steady, perfectly, quietly smooth. The sound of something finally doing exactly what it was built to do. 12 minutes, 13, 14. 14:37 passed like any other second. 15 minutes, 16, 19, 22. The efficiency monitor climbed, 94%, 96%, 98.4%. Applause began at the back of the room and rolled forward like a tide. Then the whole room was standing. Serafina Voss stood completely still. Something moved across her face. Not guilt, not yet, but the first thin fracture in something that had been solid for a very long time. Dr. Amelia caught Ryan's eye from across the room. She gave him one small nod, the kind that means, "I knew it. I always knew it." But 34 floors below, in a corridor filling with smoke, something had already gone wrong that no one in that boardroom had heard yet. Don't look away, because what Ryan does next has nothing to do with engines, and everything to do with the reason some people simply cannot stop helping, even when life has handed them every excuse to walk away. The applause was still building when the fire alarm went off. Not a test tone, the real kind, low, insistent, impossible to argue with. The overhead lights shifted to emergency red. The sprinkler system in the corridor beyond the boardroom doors exhaled a fine mist. The wall monitor flickered once, showed static, went dark. The building's intercom cut in, a voltage surge in the lower electrical grid. The engine's final calibration sequence had pulled more power than the auxiliary system was rated to handle. Smoke was rising in the first-floor corridor. Ryan was moving before the announcement finished. Not running. Something more deliberate than that. The kind of speed that comes from a person who has learned, through years of emergency repairs in the middle of the night, that urgency and panic are not the same thing. He took the stairwell, not the elevator. That mattered. Because the elevator had stopped between floors 1 and 2, in a car without power and without light. The smoke thickening by the minute. 2 people were trapped inside. A young employee named Dana, 3 weeks into her first professional job, still learning the building's layout. And Ilara Voss, 8 years old, clutching a brown teddy bear with a loose button eye, waiting for a mother who hadn't come. Ryan heard Ilara's voice before he reached the elevator bank. Thin, high, working hard to stay steady. "Hello, is anybody there? It's really dark in here." He covered the distance in seconds, pressed his palm to the door, read the gap, assessed the clearance. Then he wedged his grandfather's wrench into the seam. The same wrench Harlan had given him 20 years ago, the one that had opened more stuck things than Ryan could count. And he worked it, steady pressure, controlled. The doors resisted, complained, and finally gave way with a grinding reluctance. 87 seconds. He would look at his watch later and realize that. The smoke poured through the gap, gray and sharp. Dana was crouched at the back of the car, phone light up, one arm around Ilara's shoulders, keeping her calm with the instinctive protectiveness of someone who doesn't know the child, but knows a frightened one when she sees one. Ryan crouched to Ilara's level and lifted her. Clean, careful, the way you carry a child who needs to feel that the person holding her knows precisely what to do next. She grabbed the collar of his uniform with both hands and held on without a word. He walked her down the corridor, away from the smoke, to a bench near the emergency exit. He sat down and settled her in his lap. She was shaking, not the big, dramatic kind, but the fine, involuntary trembling that happens after fear recedes and the body finally lets itself acknowledge what it just went through. Ryan reached into his jacket pocket and found, without looking, the way parents always know what's in their pockets, a small packet of crackers from Liam's lunchbox. He pressed them into her hands. Then he did the thing that had always worked with Liam when the world felt too large and too close. He began to hum, soft and low. The wordless melody Harlan used to hum in the garage on Sunday afternoons, a tune that moved like a porch swing on a still evening. Back and forth, back and forth. Ilara stopped shaking. After a long moment, she tilted her head back to look at him, with the solemn, direct gaze that young children have when they are saying something they have thought about carefully. "You're like a dad," she said. "You fix things, and you make the scared go away without using any words." Ryan looked at her. "Your mom's on her way," he said gently. "I know." A pause. "She's usually busy." He didn't say anything to that. He just kept humming. Dana had collected herself by now, sitting on the far end of the bench, still a little pale, watching Ryan with an expression that had moved past gratitude into something quieter and more complicated. "You're the one who fixed my car," she said. "Last month, in the parking garage. My water pump. I didn't even know who you were, and you just fixed it. You said don't make a thing of it." Her voice caught slightly. "I called my mother that night and told her what happened. She said, some people are just built that way. I didn't know your name to tell her." Ryan looked a little uncomfortable. The specific, genuine discomfort of a person whose kindness has been named out loud in front of an audience. "Tell her I said thank you," he said, "for what she said." Serafina arrived at a run, which, in those particular heels, said something about the state she was in. Security was behind her. Dr. Amelia was behind them. She had come down 34 floors the moment the alarm sounded, because whatever she was as a CEO, she was Ilara's mother first, and some things override everything else. She stopped when she saw her daughter sitting quietly in a maintenance worker's lap, eating crackers, with the look of a child who has been frightened and is now completely fine. Ilara looked up. "Mom," she said, with perfect 8-year-old calm, The kind man came. Serafina's composure, the armor she'd spent 20 years building, reinforcing, perfecting, came apart all at once, completely and silently, the way something comes apart when it finally meets the one thing it was never built to withstand. She crossed the corridor in 3 steps and pulled her daughter close. Ilara's teddy bear got squeezed between them and made a small, indignant sound. Neither of them noticed. Ryan stood up. He was going to step away quietly, the way he always did. Dr. Amelia put a hand on his arm. "You stay," she said. It was not a suggestion. On the live stream that had somehow kept running through the building's backup system, Klaus Reinhardt had watched every second of it from the Munich boardroom. He rose from his chair. His colleagues looked at him. He said, in the measured, deliberate way of a man who does not waste words, "We are increasing our investment commitment by 25%. He paused. "Contingent on one condition. Ryan Caldwell leads the European project." The Detroit boardroom. Those still on the 35th floor watching the backup feed went absolutely silent. Dr. Amelia's voice, from the first-floor corridor, carried upstairs through an open intercom line that nobody had thought to close. "Good," she said. Ryan stepped outside into the November air for exactly 1 minute. He needed it. He called Liam. "Hey, buddy, you still up?" "Obviously," Liam said, with the dignity of someone who considers bedtime negotiable. "Did you fix it?" "I fixed it." And I helped somebody tonight. A little girl. She was alone and scared, and I thought about you the whole time I was with her." A pause. Then, with the absolute confidence of a 7-year-old who has been told something often enough to believe it in his bones, "Kindness always comes back, Dad." "It really does," Ryan said. He stood there for another moment in the cold, looking up at the glass tower with all its lit windows. 35 floors of people who had never once thought to ask what the maintenance man knew. But the hardest moment, the one Serafina had been walking toward without knowing it, was still waiting for her. And it wouldn't happen in a boardroom or on a live stream. It would happen in a cafeteria. 3 months later, over a cup of coffee that went cold, while someone finally said what should have been said a long time ago. Don't go anywhere, because the next part of this story is about what happens after the extraordinary moment passes, when the people who were wrong have to decide who they want to be from now on. The board met on a Thursday morning, 9 days after the engine. Serafina walked in wearing the same kind of suit she always wore. Sharp, perfectly pressed, nothing out of place. But something in the set of her shoulders was different. Something the people who had worked with her for years couldn't quite name. The way you notice the light in a familiar room has shifted without being able to say when someone touched the dimmer. The meeting lasted 40 minutes. When it ended, Serafina Voss was no longer CEO of Nexus Autotech. Her position in the company was preserved. That mattered. She had built this place from nothing, and the board acknowledged that plainly. But her new title was Strategic Advisor. With it came a meaningful reduction in authority. No more unilateral decisions. No more single-voice veto over internal submissions. No more one-line replies that ended conversations before they properly began. And a mandatory 6 months of inclusive leadership development. The kind where you sit in a room with people whose daily lives look nothing like yours, and you listen, and you do not get to speak until they have finished. Serafina accepted every condition without protest. That, perhaps, surprised people more than anything else. Ryan was recognized at a company-wide gathering 3 days later. 240 employees. The large conference room on the 28th floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows catching the gray November light off the river. Dr. Amelia stood at the front and read a formal statement from the board. Thanks to a member of our team who listened carefully, helped generously, and persisted quietly, Nexus Autotech has secured the most significant contract in our history. His analysis, submitted 6 weeks ago and not acted upon, has been entered into the company record and formally credited as the foundational solution. Ryan sat in the third row, hands folded in his lap, with the particular expression of a man who would very much prefer that everyone redirect their attention elsewhere. Carol from accounting started the applause. 3 months passed. The productive, Slightly strange kind of months that come after something big has shifted. When the world is still finding its new shape and everyone is quietly figuring out who they are inside it. Ryan moved into the engineering division. He still sometimes arrived early and walked the maintenance hallways on his way up. Checking on things, the way you check on old neighbors. Habit, he said when anyone asked. Everyone who knew him understood it was something simpler than habit. Liam acquired a best friend named Cooper, who had decided that automotive engineers were, in his exact and considered opinion, significantly cooler than astronauts. The torn shirt days at school stopped. Alara had begun leaving small drawings on Ryan's desk, crayon illustrations of a man with a wrench, labeled in the evolving handwriting of an 8-year-old, the kind man. Then the humming man. Then, one Tuesday that Ryan would remember for the rest of his life, the elevator hero, which he folded carefully and tucked into his wallet next to the photograph of Liam. It was a Tuesday in February when Serafina found him, not in a formal setting, in the company cafeteria, 20 minutes past noon, at a corner table. He was alone, with a sandwich he hadn't started and a cup of coffee that had gone cold, while he read something in the spiral notebook, the same one, still the same notebook. She sat down across from him without asking. A long moment passed. She looked at her hands, then she looked up, and her eyes were red. Not the polished exhaustion of someone who works too many hours, but the real kind, the kind that comes from crying in a private room and then walking back out into the world anyway. "I mocked you," she said. Her voice was steady, but just barely. "In front of everyone. I said things about you that I had no right to say, and you were the one who—" She stopped, collected herself, continued. "You saved my daughter." "With a wrench, an old song, and a packet of crackers from your son's lunchbox, while I was upstairs being everything I had trained myself to be." She shook her head, slow. "I don't know how you apologize for something like that." Ryan was quiet for a moment. He closed the notebook. "You don't owe me an apology," he said, and he meant it. Not generously, not magnanimously, just as plain truth. "I didn't help Alara to make a point, or to settle a score, or because I had something to prove. I helped her because she was a little girl who was scared and alone, and that was the only reason I needed." He picked up his coffee, cold by now, the way cafeteria coffee always ends up when you've been thinking too hard to drink it, and wrapped both hands around the mug out of old habit. "My grandfather used to say, don't judge a person by what they're doing right now. Look at what's in their heart. That goes for you the same as anyone else. You're still figuring things out. Most people are. You're still figuring things out. Most people are." Serafina looked at him for a long time. Then she cried. Not the composed, private kind from earlier, the full kind, at a cafeteria table, in the middle of an ordinary Tuesday, in front of a man she had publicly humiliated with a room full of witnesses, her expensive mascara being completely unhelpful. Ryan didn't look away. He didn't say it's okay or please don't. Those phrases that slide right off grief without touching it. He just stayed present with her in it. The way a person does when they understand that certain moments need to be felt all the way through before they can be set down. After a while, she wiped her face with a paper napkin and sat up a little straighter. "Alara hums now," she said, quieter. "At bedtime. The melody you were humming in the corridor." A pause. "She told me it's the song that means you're safe now." Ryan smiled at that, small and genuine. "Good melody for a kid to have," he said. The company posted a new policy the following week, 4 paragraphs, plain language. The center of it was this: every team member's voice, from night shift maintenance staff to the executive suite, must be documented, reviewed, and genuinely considered. Because the solution that saves this company may come from anywhere. Several people noted privately that it was the most consequential 4 paragraphs the company had ever written. It was framed and hung in the main lobby, near the elevator bank, just above the spot where a pair of doors had been pried open with a $37 repair kit and 12 years of a grandfather's faith in a grandson. But the story wasn't quite finished, because 6 months later, Something happened in the factory overseas that nobody had predicted, and it started with a 7-year-old boy sprinting across a factory floor toward his father. Stay with us, we're almost at the end. And this ending is the kind that makes you want to put down the phone and call someone you love. Munich, Germany, June. The kind of morning that makes you believe summer is permanent. Long light slanting through tall windows. Cool air that hasn't decided yet whether to stay. The smell of something green coming in off the street. Ryan stood on the observation platform of the Reinhardt Mobility Facility, watching the test floor below. 12 autonomous transport vehicles. NX7 engines in every one. Moving in slow, measured arcs across the track. Smooth, quiet, perfectly calibrated. They ran exactly the way he had heard them running in his mind. On all those nights alone in the empty boardroom, one hand on the casing, listening. He had been in Munich for 3 weeks. He missed Liam with the specific. Physical weight of a parent separated from a child. The way a house sounds different when a 7-year-old isn't in it. Even when that 7-year-old has never once been quiet. But Liam was arriving today. He heard him before he saw him. That particular sound of small sneakers on a polished factory floor. The barely controlled half-run of a child who has been waiting a very long time and has run out of patience for appearing composed. Then Liam burst through the observation room door and crossed the platform in approximately 4 steps and launched himself at his father with the full, unself-conscious force of a boy who has decided dignity can wait. Ryan caught him, held him, pressed his face into the top of his son's hair for a long, quiet moment. "You smell like the airplane," he said finally. "You smell like motor oil," Liam said, with deep satisfaction. "You were working." "I was." Liam pulled back to look at him, those wide, serious eyes, the ones that still occasionally knocked Ryan sideways because they were his mother's eyes, the same shape and the same particular warmth, like something that had left and also stayed. "Did you fix everything you needed to fix?" "Most of it," Ryan said. "The rest will keep." Liam nodded, satisfied. "Good, because Cooper says we should take a picture in front of one of the trucks, for school." "Cooper's going to run this industry someday," Ryan said. "I know," Liam agreed, as though this were simply factual. That evening, back at the company apartment near the Englischer Garten, a video message came through on Ryan's phone. Alara Voss. She had propped her mother's phone on a stack of hardcover books to get the angle right. She was wearing her school uniform, and it was clear she had prepared remarks. You could tell because she kept glancing slightly down and to the left. The way people do when they've written notes on paper and are trying to look spontaneous while also not forgetting anything important. "Dear Mr. Ryan," she began, very formally. Then she seemed to remember she was talking to the humming man, and her shoulders relaxed a little. "Thank you for saving me in the elevator, and for the crackers, and for the song." A pause. "I taught the song to Buttons." She held up the brown teddy bear, the one with the loose button eye, resewn now, neat and secure. "He knows all of it." Another pause, the kind where a child is deciding whether to say the next thing. "Mom is different now. She asks me how my day was when I get home. And she actually listens to the whole thing, even the parts about what happened at lunch." A small, observant pause. That's new. She glanced down at her notes one more time, then back up. "I think you fixed more than the engine," she said. "Kindness is the best thing." She considered this conclusion. Buttons agrees. Ryan watched the video 3 times that evening. He would watch it many more times over the years, in hotel rooms, on long flights, on the occasional night when the particular kind of quiet that lives inside a good and full life made itself felt unexpectedly. It always helped, every single time. That night, Ryan and Liam sat on the front steps of the apartment building while the city made its evening sounds around them. The last of the light going long and warm and golden the way June light does when it is finally ready to go. Liam had his crayons out, working on a drawing with the focused, unhurried concentration of someone who takes their art seriously. Ryan leaned over to look. A man with a wrench. A boy standing next to him, and surrounding them both, a large circle of small figures. People, each one distinct. A woman with curly hair, a tall young man, a girl in a doorway, a woman with reading glasses on a chain, a small blonde figure that Liam had given a noticeably friendlier expression than strict historical accuracy might have required. "Who's everyone?" Ryan asked. Liam didn't look up from his coloring. "Everybody you helped," he said simply. "I couldn't fit all of them, so I just did some." Ryan looked at the drawing for a long time. Outside, a street lamp came on, somewhere nearby. A church bell counted out the hour in that unhurried, certain way old bells do, as if time is not something to be anxious about, only something to be spent wisely. This story teaches us 3 things worth writing down, not on a sticky note, but in the good notebook, the one you keep in the kitchen drawer next to the church bulletin. First, the help you give quietly. The car you help jumpstart in a February parking lot. The casserole you leave on a neighbor's porch without knocking. It doesn't disappear, it circulates. Sometimes it comes back to you directly. More often, it keeps moving, touching people you'll never meet. Second, if you've been sitting on something useful, a skill, an observation, an offer of help, and someone dismissed it once, offer it again. Ryan submitted that report a second time. That second time changed everything. Third, this week, do one small thing for someone without mentioning it afterward. Fix the thing, leave the dish, hum the song, then let it go. That's the whole practice. So here is a question, and we mean it the way a good neighbor means something when she leans across the porch rail on a quiet evening. The sprinklers just starting up, the fireflies just beginning. Have you ever been passed over because of where you were in life, rather than who you actually are? Have you ever helped someone quietly, fixed something, showed up, stayed longer than you had to, and wondered whether it mattered at all? It mattered. This story was written by a human, with AI as a companion. It came from a very simple wish, to awaken the lingering goodness in every heart, and to gently remind us that no matter how bumpy life gets, there are always beautiful moments and small miracles quietly waiting for us to open our hearts and embrace them.